Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far with what some pros are considering the rock bottom of the CDL so far. What can the pros actually do to resolve this situation? The game is still broken, it's incredibly difficult to even get into private matches to try and play, and even if they can, the spawns are wrong, the CDL rules are gone for a couple more weeks, it's an absolute disaster. Some pros are even suggesting they should go on strike to try and make the CDL change things, but would that actually make any difference? Very much enjoying your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always. Don't forget, we are less than 2 weeks away now from the first CDL match of the season. The pros have not been able to meaningfully practice since the Warzone update a few days ago, and it's not looking like it's going to get fixed anytime soon, and yeah, some are not happy. Well, all are not happy. Some are more angry than others. This from Jacob: expect nothing and you can't be disappointed. And even as Brian State says, I've been expecting nothing for the past 3 days and still been pretty disappointed the fact that they can't even play scrims. Now, finally, last night, some teams managed to get on, as JP Krez says, OpTic and aLLeY coming up on day 4 and 5 of no scrims this weekend. I believe OpTic again had to chalk it up last night. Some teams made it into some private matches, but as aBeZy says, just to kind of catch you guys up on this if you haven't been following the drama of the last few days, haven't been able to scrim in 4 days with the qualifiers coming up in less than 2 weeks. They broke private matches and took out the CDL rules. Apparently spawns are all messed up as well. This is the key thing. Now, there's been some rumours going around that the footstep audio that was massively boosted a few days ago has now been returned back to normal. So I guess, like, fantastic positive news, but yeah, the key issue is this, and apparently the spawns, they've even made them worse. It's crazy to think that the game, when this game first came out, it wasn't in a particularly good state at all for competitive, and now it's even worse and it's unplayable. So I suppose that's just fantastic stuff. So Envoy comes out with this yesterday, and this is like pretty serious stuff. This is coming directly at the guys who make these decisions and trying to push for some serious change. Finally scrimming after 4 days. So Los Angeles Thieves clearly yesterday got back into some custom games. The thing is though, a lot of private matches will just crash and get a dev error when you actually try and play them. So some teams have tried to work through that and try and get past it. Some teams have just, chalked it up and not bothered because it's too much effort for what it's worth. And especially because the CDL rule set, which was added into the game very early on in honestly kind of impressive and unique fashion, was removed a few days ago with the Warzone update for whatever reason, maybe because it was glitching or something. But you'd think if they're going to do that, you've got to add it back in within a few days' time. That's not happened, and apparently the pros have even been told, because of course they're talking to the CDL guys, they're talking to whatever channels they have to the CDL to say, hey, look guys, we need this fixed, get on these developers, get in their ears all day, every day to try and get this stuff fixed and get this to be a top priority thing. But, if the CDL even does receive that information and even does have the connections to the actual developers to make that happen, they either don't get listened to or it's just such a low priority that, makes you question why the CDL existed in the first place. That means Control won't give extra time per tick, right? So this is another key thing. Without the CDL rules, like, the game doesn't play as it should. There's certain things that are in the CDL rules that you can't maybe set up yourself manually in the rule set. And even this, ultimate perks, you've got to use them now. After not having had to use them for the last couple of weeks when the game came out, you've now got to basically, everyone I think has got to run Ghost on their class because, like, Ghost is the only useless one and they weren't really using these ultimate perks in the CDL rules, but now they've got to again. And also the spawns have changed and the spawns are seemingly worse. So, Envoy's coming out with a list of things that need to change and frankly must change as soon as is feasibly possible. Now, will it get changed at all? Because as Chrome comes out with last night, still no ETA, no estimated time of arrival on the Trello board. They've still said, yeah, it's a global known issue and that it may be fixed at some point, it may not be fixed. And clearly the pros have been told that it's going to be at least 2 weeks until this stuff gets changed, which is like, lads, the season starts on December the 2nd. That's less than 2 weeks time. What are we going to do? And also, the season can't really be postponed. Okay, they can postpone the Challengers Cups, but can they postpone the actual matches? They can maybe postpone the online matches or just have to cancel them entirely, but they can't postpone the actual events, right? I mean, there is an event in Raleigh on December 15th through to the 18th, and that is immovable. And the other events as well, the Boston one, the OpTic one, the New York one, or whatever's going on, like, they've booked the venues. Like, it's got to be when it is for the major events. Now, if there are no matches on December the 2nd because they physically cannot do it, and even if there are matches, I'm sure it's going to be an absolute shambles with all the game crashes that probably will still be happening. And the pros apparently have been getting rumoured to them that, yeah, this isn't going to get fixed for close to 2 weeks, which is an absolute shambles, to be perfectly honest. And to make it even more funny, but also sad at the same time, is that because of these kind of no CDL settings, the ultimate perks can't be banned, so therefore you've got to use Ghost because it's the useless one because they don't use UAVs, but Ghost is level 52, so you have to, level up in private matches, in public matches, to get to level 52 to actually play custom games properly. properly. You can't just sit there and sit back and relax and just go into custom games at level 1 and have everything ready to go. You've got to like unlock Ghost, I think, which is why I think KC Panda was grinding through shoot house pubs to get to level 52 to even play custom games. Absolute disaster. And even when you can get into the game, which is few and far between, as Bance says here, I mean, look at this classic spawn. Quality isn't great, but number 2 blue team spawns up here. So of course, with number 2 spawning here, you'd think that the red team's going to spawn on this side of the map. Turns out as soon as number 2 comes out, number 6 spawns behind, and then a massive squad spawn comes in on this side of the map as well. And the blue team are like, well, what is going on here? It doesn't even make any sense. But yeah, cheers to Infinity Ward for that one. And even as, Panda says, you've got to ruin shoot house lobbies for people to get to level 52 to scrim. Absolute shambles. So that's the thing. The next question is, what are we going to do about this situation? What can the pros do? Because the pros have got to focus on their own thing. They've got to try and practice the game. They've got to try and make content if that's what they're doing. And of course, in fairness, for the last few days, they haven't been doing much practicing. So I guess they can spend their time on other things. As Scrappy says, the game is chalked. Might have to play with normal rules for the league matches. That's the thing. Like, if it is chalked as it seems to be, then, and there's no CDL rules for 2 weeks, they've got to play on these normal rule sets for the league matches, which is going to make them play incredibly differently to what they usually would. And also, the custom games might be bugged anyway. So what's even going on anymore? Scrappy reckons this is rock bottom of, at least what he's experienced so far in the CDL. And even this right from Bance, which is just tragic. But like, honestly, at least Vanguard was playable, right? We never had this situation in Vanguard where custom games simply didn't work and the pros couldn't practice. Okay, it was a terrible game. Maybe it was kind of fun to watch, but it was like, at least it was playable, right? And as Bance says, want Vanguard back. We are 2 and a bit weeks into Modern Warfare 2 and we're already wanting Vanguard back. It is not a good sign. Now, this from Hitch, players got to put their foot down. So what does this mean? What actually could be achieved here, right? So yes, the players, obviously, they're not happy about this situation. What can they theoretically do to solve it? Because they can't go in and code the game. They can lobby the CDL as hard as they possibly can to try and get the CDL to reach out to the devs to change things, but I'm not really sure the players can have that much power in this situation. To me, the responsibility is kind of on the owners, because the owners are the ones with the power really here over the CDL, because they're the ones that have got to pay the money at the end of the day, and they're the ones that haven't paid, largely, the $25 million buy-in fee. They've paid it over installments over many years, and some of them, I think, have only paid probably the first $5 million or so. So, they have some power over the CDL. If the owners got together and tried to form a coalition here, then I think that's what would potentially have power to make the CDL, actually, we probably do need to work with Activision Blizzard here to make sure we have, a good contact to the developers, because, Infinity Ward probably don't even know the CDL exists. So as Mork says here, one of the Challenger players, to all the pros complaining, how about you actually do something instead of tweeting into an empty void? As Ben J. Nassim says, though, the only thing that will do it is public outcry, which I've been trying, and Crone's been trying, and everyone else has been trying for the last few days to make this as wide a known problem as possible, and I think we've succeeded. Whether that means anything, I don't know. And as Ben also says, owner pressure is the other thing to fix. So, but some pros think the pros could do more, which maybe is understandable here, because a lot of pros tweet, but do they really do anything else in terms of lobbying? And maybe they shouldn't have to. They certainly shouldn't have to. But it's like, is that the best for the scene? Because, some would say that these guys are trying to protect their salaries rather than make the CDL better. And you can't blame them, right? It's very easy to look at a player and say, oh yeah, he should be striking or, just refuse to play or something. But then, he's going to lose his job. So, obviously, people could be hypocritical about that. It's easy to say that someone else should do that. And then when it's yourself, it's like, well, actually, hang on a second here. Especially when there's no clear union or anything, right? As Method says, sure, let me drive in and I'll fix it myself. You don't think we're trying it, not sure what anyone expects the players to do. I mean, I get it, Zin. People are getting paid, don't want to risk losing it, but a lot of people aren't. It's a tough position to be put in, but the only thing that can be done is for the pros to organise, as in unionise, and demand change. There is an amateur community across 3 regions that depend on the 48 players in the league to make sure this esport is viable to compete in for the years to come. Interesting point, right? That, the entire challenger ecosystem depends on the pros trying to do their best to make sure the game is playable. It shouldn't really depend on the pros. There should be other people that make this happen, but the pros are going to do what they can, I suppose. Now, SlasheR reckons they should go one step further. Method is probably, he's going to tweet out, but he's not going to, Method isn't going to sit there and strike. He's not going to say, you know what, guys, I'm not going to play, cut my salary, because, what are the CDL going to do? Are they even going to care? They're just going to say, all right, let's pick up a challenger player. You've got Beans on your bench. You're paying him, bring him in. And if not, there's going to be some hungry amateurs out there that are more than happy to take Method's spot if he wants to strike it out. So it's like, I don't really see how that actually makes any difference unless there actually is like a union and a players association that they have some power together, which obviously right now isn't the case. But as SlasheR says, we are trying words, basically saying that he doesn't reckon they really are trying. And then Clayster comes back at this and responds, seeing this narrative how it's somehow the pros' fault for things being the way they are. We advocate the best we can, but there really isn't a way for us to do anything about the game in any regard. We have more flexibility with the CDL stuff, the CDL rule sets, but the actual game stuff and the state of the game is out of our hands. As Hitch says, definitely isn't your fault, but unfortunately the players are the only ones with any power. I disagree with Hitch here. I think the owners have more power, to be honest. Maybe he just wants to, maybe Hex isn't doing much and he doesn't want to say like, oh, the owners should be doing stuff. I don't know. But, it's easier for the outside looking in. I tend to disagree with any power. They just made $1 billion in a week. Now more than ever, they're just, not going to care about us, right? Which is understandable, but also it's like, surely that was the point of the CDL would be my argument back on that. But I thought there was meant to be, some further communication between the devs and the pros, and so you could actually get things done. Turns out you can't get things done. And as Clay goes on to say, I think the only people with real power here are the 12 owners who attend meetings. I'm sure most, if not all of the players have spoken to management about this stuff. It's up to them to actually apply the pressure, but who knows if that'll even work. But SlasheR reckons that, yeah, the pros could do more. I think pros can do more than just send a tweet and hope. He doesn't say outright what he's thinking here, but what else is he thinking other than effectively just refusing to play, or I don't exactly know what they would even do. But they've got to think of something, because if this doesn't change quickly, as Scrappy said, it's pretty much rock bottom here. The pros can't even play the game. So as Clay says, I mean, depending on how many people are willing, it's not like we're all irreplaceable, right? There are plenty of people that would sign a minimum to be in the league. We are expendable. This is the thing for the pros. If SlasheR and the other big name pros say, you know what, we're going to refuse to play, to boycott the CDL basically until they actually make some substantial changes so that, the CDL is actually an important factor, will Activision even care? Or will they just be like, okay, sound, just sign some amateurs and we're going to keep the league going? I mean, what do you want to do? So yeah, I don't know. It's a really tough one. I can understand SlasheR's point of view. I can understand Clayster's point of view and Method's point of view. And I think honestly, it's the owners that really need to be taken to responsibility here. I'm sure they are talking to the CDL to try and make things happen because their pros will be pressuring their owners and their management to make this happen. But if they don't really combine into some sort of coalition, I don't know if anything's really going to be done. And even just to mention Scump's perspective here, because as he said last night, I think they were going to scrim and then it didn't even happen. So they had to play Warzone instead. And it's like, Scump says on stream, like, what are we meant to do?
What is going on? No practice again today. They broke the game. They broke the game. Custom lobbies currently are not working. So here we are again. We can't scrim. We have a match in 2 weeks. Woohoo! Woohoo! We've got a match in, 13... We got a match in 15 days. Can't scrim.
So as Parasite even says, right, they're proper channels that the players are meant to go through. They usually get nowhere, right? And obviously this massive issue that needs to be fixed immediately genuinely hasn't. And even as SlasheR says, back in 2019 when Modern Warfare 2019 came out and he tried to put his foot down and say, look, this squad spawns are awful. You've got 26 hardpoints on the map. It's like a terrible idea. Like the way the maps are being designed. They were trying, but the reality is, as he says, you give people an inch, they'll take a mile. So if you allow the developers to do one thing, they're going to go, way further steps than that. And it's a continuous downward spiral. And that's the thing. Like there's some positive steps the CDL has taken this year, but the developers, as expected, just don't actually care at all. And the CDL doesn't have the power over the developers to try and push for any change to be made. So look, is it even possible to unionize, to come up with a players association? I know that Clay has talked about this before. Thought this is funny from Clay, really. He says, look, I've spoken to many players in the past, but it's impossible once players found out they had to pay union dues. So it's like, they were going to do it. The players were down to make a union, but then they were like, we have to pay money to make this run? Like, no chance, son. And understandably, as Clay goes on to say, it's like, look, wrangling COD pros for stuff like this is pretty low on my priority list at this point. I haven't got much left in the tank of my career anyway. So, it feels like I was fighting against the wind at points. So, look, what do you guys think about this? It's an absolute disaster class from all sides, and I just wonder what the next step's going to be. The pros are going to keep complaining about it, understandably, but what can they do on their own? Should they, boycott it together? Should they try and come together and the big players will just boycott the league or something? Like, if Scump actually did it, because Scump at this point, he knows he's retiring at the end of the year. Like, why not just go out with the bag? I don't know what the plan would be there. But even if they did, does it matter? Like, will the CDL just say, okay, whatever, lads, just bring some amateurs in? And it's not really going to matter, right? So I don't know what's going to happen here, but we just need the devs to actually care. Because if this was Treyarch and they were having these issues, they have developers that actually follow the competitive scene and would, say, all right, we've got to fix this within a couple of days. It's been 4 or 5 days at this point, and the pros reckon it's not going to get fixed for another couple of weeks, at which point the CDL's begun on the wrong rules and probably in a completely unplayable state. So yeah, I don't even know anymore. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.